Our last reader tonight is Jacob Strunk. Jacob has been shortlisted for both the Student Academy Award and the Pushcart Prize in Fiction, as well as the Glimmer Train Short Story Award and a New Rivers Press Book Prize. His films have screened in competition and by invitation across the world. He earned his MFA in creative writing from the University of Southern Maine's Stone Coast program and teaches film and media in Los Angeles, where he lives with a few framed movie posters and the ghost of his cat, Stephen. I love the ghost of the cat. Welcome. Welcome, Jacob. Are you out there?
I am here. Thank you for having me. Everyone can hear me? I have unmuted myself. Okay, great. You guys are all very brave, and I have never written about myself. I prefer to hide behind the veneer of fiction, which I do believe speaks to a larger truth. And that is what you will find in this, which is coming out May 30th. It's called Streaming in Tongues. It's a little collection from Alien Buddha Press, which is a funky little indie press. I think of it like a punk rock EP. Most of these stories are newer-ish. This one is actually an older one. It's not quite Stone Coast old, but it was originally published in a literary magazine called The Feral Pages, which was run and edited by fellow Stone Coaster Lyman Firo. So it's in the family. Yeah, I did promise on Twitter that there would be swear words, and I will stick with that, but it's nothing too bad. It's PG-13. I don't think we even get into hard R territory. But yes, if you're wondering, I am hiding in here somewhere, but you'll have to find me. The story is called Bats. It's a big splash when it first comes, hot on your hands. Your hands there on the worn slatboard fence. Supporting your weight as you, on your tiptoes, lean in as far as you can to watch. It comes first in that big splash, like from a bucket, as the jugular is torn open. After that, it runs steady, but down at least, down onto the hay, and then the cement, and then it runs under the slatboard fence and out past it, splashing on your feet. The thing is still kicking, still screaming. It sounds like a woman, you think. God damn it. It's Isaiah, shouting as the thing gets back on its feet, running circles, spilling blood. It rams one of the walls and you feel it shake. But still, you step up onto the first slat so you can lean further in. Isaiah kicks it, bracing himself against the wall, leaving a bloody boot print on its neck. It goes down now, and Isaiah gets on its back, grabs an ear, and sinks the blade in again, deeper. Puta, it says. And you can hear the strain in his voice. See his hand wrist deep in the thing's neck. See him twist. It stops squealing. You turn away as Isaiah gets off it, wipes his brow. You hear him shout at his son, God damn it, let it get up. But you are watching the red run past your shoes, a river down into the mud of the driveway where it begins to split apart, rocks and boot prints and tire tracks, dividing it into 1,000 smaller tributaries, spreading, reaching, like a great red hand toward the forest. You turn back to see Isaiah and his son, you don't remember his name, have opened the stall, dragged the thing out. They're winching it into the bed of the pickup truck, that same blue truck they've always had. Isaiah is sweating now, catching his breath, his hands on his knees. His son says something and taps his shoulder, and Isaiah laughs. They don't look at you, but rather head back into the stall, shut it from the inside. You watch them push out as much blood as they can with a broom, then lay down a fresh layer of hay. Even with your allergy medication, you feel the dust crawling up into your sinuses and you sneeze, but just once, and into your sleeve. They don't seem to notice. Isaiah finishes spreading the hay while his son opens the gate on the other side and heads out into the yard. You watch Isaiah as he leans against the wood of the stall, lights a cigarette. You see in this moment what you usually don't, his age. It's written on his face like a map, like a topography, 1,000 tributaries etched deep into his dark skin. There's a rattle at the back of the stall and the kid comes back, pushing along another pig. The pig hesitates at the door, looking into the stall and snorting. Isaiah flicks the cigarette out past you into the barnyard. Come on, pig, he says. And the pig, it almost shrugs as it shuffles into the center of the stall. The kid shuts the gate behind it and climbs back out. You climb up onto that first slat so you can lean in closer. The pig is sniffing and snorting and rooting around in the hay. It lifts its head and its snout comes up red and dripping. Isaiah looks at you and says, cover your ears. Then in one movement, he steadies his body in front of the pigs, trains the pistol. You didn't cover your ears and they ring as you watch the thing stand for an eternity, just stand dumbly, blood dripping from its snout and the tiny hole in its forehead. Then one of its legs buckles and it begins to scream and kick. You're glad your ears are ringing. that screaming, that wet screaming. Isaiah's kid is back over the side of the stall and digging a knee into the pig's back, pinning it down. Isaiah gets on his own knees in front of it, seemingly deaf to the god-awful wailing or the mist and bloody snot coming out of its nose with each frantic, gasping breath. God damn it, he says, as the thing almost gets its footing. But then Isaiah has driven the blade deep into the thing's neck and pulls hard and fast in the way you would expect from someone his age. The pull is quick, almost a blur, and it leaves the pig's throat gaping. And with that pull comes the blood all the way to where you stand like a bucket dumped onto the floor. You feel it splash your hands again, so hot it stings. You feel a drop hit your cheek, another hits your forehead. You watch the two men as they hold the beast down as the shrieking grows quiet. You see the kid's knee move up and down slowly as the pig breathes. It's breathing mostly blood now. You see Isaiah relax a bit, slide off its head where he had placed his weight. He pats it on the top of its head, leans in. He says, "Come on, pig." He says, "Come on." You can hear beneath you and behind you the blood running down through the barnyard. You hear it slow as it hits that big puddle in the center, all muddy water, ancient clay. You hear it trickle along as it finds a dozen paths to the same destination. But you don't look this time. You know what it looks like. As they drag the thing from the stall, you watch the bloody clumps of hay that cling to the swinging slatboard fence. They winch it up into the pickup truck, and Isaiah once again rests his hands on his knees. His kid looks at you, says something, and they both laugh. Isaiah straightens himself, moans quietly, then comes over, puts a hand on your shoulder. "Nice night," he says. "Buenas noches," you try. Isaiah and the kid laugh at this. "We started late. You think you can find us a lantern? You know where they are?" He pats your shoulder. You smell the blood on his hand, but you like the feel of his touch. Firm, affirming, strong. Isaiah turns back to his son, and you go fetch the lantern. It takes them 2 hours to skin both pigs, hides, heads, hooves put aside. They'll be used. Entrails collected in a bucket and shucked out behind the edge of the lantern's light. Even now, already you can hear things tearing at them, fighting, pulling strips off and out past the tree line. In the dark, you can imagine what these things will do. You sit beside a small fire, warming your hands. But it is a nice night, he was right, the perfect September night. The air gets cold quickly up here at elevation, that first bite of frost in your sinuses if you breathe deeply enough. You collected what blood you could in a metal pail when they hung them up. Let them bleed out before you butcher. The blood will hide in the meat, spoil it. Best to collect it. There are things to do with blood. The pail sits beside you at the fire. It stinks. It stinks like pig, but worse. As Isaiah and his kid work over the second pig, finishing up the night's work, your eyes are drawn away from them, drawn to the big, dark house down the driveway. It's a classic homestead house. You know this from school. Small rooms arranged off big rooms. Small windows to keep in the heat in the winter. You know from reading and from where the chimney is that the big cast iron stove sits directly in the center of the kitchen, pushing its radiant heat out toward all the rooms and up to the second floor. There's movement in one of the windows, you realize, and you squint to make it out, your heart suddenly speeding up. After a moment, it resolves, and you watch the reflection, that's what it is, of Isaiah's kid's back as he pushes and pulls. You hear the scrape of his handsaw against bone. In the window, his firelit reflection flickers like an old movie. Isaiah's hand on your shoulder again startles you. You can smell the blood on it, feel its unnatural heat. You look up at him and he smiles. Looking at the house. "Yes," you answer, knowing he wasn't asking. "Your padre ever take you inside?" You shake your head. Isaiah's hand squeezes your shoulder tight. You look down at it and see there are no wrinkles, no deep creases. It is a strong hand as it has always been, ageless. You think for a moment it must be all the blood. Isaiah turns, shouts something to his son, then pats your shoulder once and steps beside you. His son nods, wiping his hands on his pants. "Well," he says, "let's have us a look." You stand, your white blonde hair not even up to his chest. Isaiah pulls the lantern down and steps forward through the overgrown lawn toward the house's back door. As you approach, it dawns on you that you are terrified. Looking at all those black windows, murky shapes swimming behind them, you wish you hadn't agreed. You wish you hadn't been caught looking up at this thing. You wish you hadn't looked at all. But Isaiah moves deftly, pulling open the storm door and stepping into the summer kitchen. The door creaks, long and low, but it's almost welcoming. It's familiar. You follow close behind, not wanting to be left outside the dim circle his lantern casts. The summer kitchen is just a screened-in porch, a place to work and prepare and even lounge when the summer temperatures and humidity made the damp house unbearable. In one corner, you see a torn hammock. All around are old coffee cans, some brands you recognize, some you don't, some you can't make out. They are filled with rusted nails, acorns, teeth. Used to sleep out here some nights when I was a boy. He looks down at you. Got awfully hot upstairs. Some nights we'd all be out here. 7 of us kids, or in the yard. As he says this, you see something glint in his eye, a memory, love, and then he turns and the lantern's shadow leaves his face a black hole. Isaiah slowly opens the door to the house and you can almost hear the air being sucked out or in. As you follow him inside, you're struck immediately by an acrid smell, old wood smoke, years of wood smoke. It's not just in the air, it's in everything, in the wood of which the house itself is built. And you, standing there in the kitchen on cracked linoleum, dirt and dead bugs beneath your feet, it's in you now too. Isaiah raises the lantern over his head and squints, and you get a look at the whole room. The kitchen, there's the wood stove, there's the table. A modest window looks out toward the woods. Off to one side, you see a narrow door, and beyond it, a cramped bedroom. An old bedspread is perfectly made atop the bed. You can't see much of it, but when you look up to Isaiah, watch him scan the room himself, see how his mouth is half open, how he wipes his hand on his work pants. You get it, really get it, that this is where he was born. This was their home, generations before your family ever came up the mountain. You hear Isaiah take a deep breath, hold it, let it out slowly. See, he says, smells like it. Then, his boots heavy on the old floor, he leads you through the kitchen, into the parlor, the sitting room. Through the front windows, you see what was once a grand porch, the whole length of the house. You see that tree out there? You squint, then nod. There's a rake in that tree. You frown, confused. He says, been a rake in that tree for 30 years. He says, my brother leaned it there one afternoon, forgot about it. He says, just a couple tines sticking out the trunk. He's dead now. You look out the window, straining to see, but Isaiah has moved on, taking the light with him, and begun to head up the narrow staircase. You pause at the bottom, watching his silhouette grow smaller with each creeping step. He pauses, waiting for you, and suddenly you are again terrified, not of the dark, not of the stillness. No, what scares you now is everything that used to fill this house. You step carefully up behind him. In the hallway at the top of the stairs, you're hit once again by a smell. This one's sweet, like old grass or dried flowers, but sour too. You close your eyes and smell, breathing it in deep. You're about to ask what it is. Bat shit, he says. Bats up here in the attic. You get nervous, begin to swipe at things you know are soon to be crawling all over you, flapping at you, sinking teeth into you, drawing blood, drawn to blood. Not now, not until it freezes, but by the winter. He looks around, holding the lantern again. You watch as Isaiah bends down, picks something up and hands it to you. He is smiling. You take it, and then in the lantern glow, you see what it is. A dead bat. Its wings frozen out at its sides. It looks like those tissue paper bats you hang up with your mom at Halloween. Tissue paper bats with cardboard wings, dangling from the ceiling, baring their teeth. You lean in a bit to take a look. You can't see its teeth, or its eyes, just dead little sockets like empty nail holes. Got another one. You look over and Isaiah is picking them up off the floor. He comes over to you and says, here, hands you the lantern. He takes the bat out of your hands and, his own arms full of them, sticks it in his mouth, clamping gently down on one of those dry wings. He looks around, finds 2 more. Let's go, you lead down, he says, muffled by the dead bat in his teeth. In the lantern's glow, you see little dribbles of brown spit running down the corners of his mouth, his teeth and hands full. You shrug at him, then understand. He nods to the stairs, and you again see the spit as the corners of his mouth turn up around the bat in his teeth, and you know he's smiling at you. Holding the lantern high, you lead the way down.
That is explosive prose, explosively.
Thanks,
Wow,
man.
Jacob, is that, and I maybe wasn't paying attention, is that a novel or a short story collection, The Screaming in Tongues?
This is a collection. Yeah.
So that's from one short story.
That is one short story, yeah.
And it sustains itself in second person all the way through, like that?
It does. I have always liked playing with second person and present tense, and then, swapping timelines about. I just have fun getting weird because my stories are weird.
I loved it. I'm really interested in what you're doing in film. I'm going to reach out to you and talk to you about that. I grew up down there, right? And anyway, fantastic.
I kind of, in certain circles, I think I've kind of become known as like a horror guy, but I would like to think it's more horror adjacent. Like someone asked me a month or two ago when I said, "Oh, I'm putting together a collection of stories." They were like, "Oh, what's your prose like?" And I said, horror adjacent means that there isn't necessarily a werewolf, but there might be like a disturbing presence in the forest that represents a childhood trauma or something.
Cool.
I like to keep it weird and ambiguous.
Well,
And
you
I
know,
love how, oh, sorry. I
go
love
ahead.
how totally real it is. It's much scarier to me, you know, I mean, the everything in it. And you made it so real, Jacob, with the bat. I think I remember that your reading was really a performance.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go
The
ahead, Jenny. I could talk about that for a while. That is fantastic scene writing, Jacob. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's so visceral, like the details, the bloody boot print, the kid's knee moving up and down. Like there were just your action sequencing, you can tell you're in cinema, you know, it's just like so cinematic, so like we're just moving through it moment to moment. It was really gripping and terrifying.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.